Hello everybody and welcome to the Webster Public Library. I'm Jenny Paxson. I'm the Reader's Discovery Librarian here at the library. I also do our programming for our families and caregivers and supports for people with developmental disabilities. I have 2 children, ages 8 and 10, who have autism. My daughter also has Down syndrome, so it's become I've become very passionate advocate for them, and I realize that there's not a lot of information and services. I mean, there are a lot of information services, but it's a real struggle for families to get that information and figure out what's available out there for them. And these came out of that, and also our fair that we do in April every year, just trying to get those services and supports to the people who need them. And it was a natural pairing with Parents Helping Parents, Coalition of Monroe County, and then also Autism Up to collaborate on these diverse abilities dialogues that we do every month. As Parents Helping Parents like to say, it takes a village, and parents are the best at getting information to each other and sharing and finding resources to the community. And so it's been wonderful to have people like Kim from Parents Helping Parents to bounce those things off of, and then also then starting these diverse abilities dialogues and bringing wonderful people like we have here today on our Taboo Topics / Ask Me Anything panel. So we're going to talk about different things like GI, sex education, relationship issues, strange OT type things that might arise, and we'll get started in that, but I do want to have Kim come up here and talk about Parents Helping Parents, and also about any events that they might be having coming up. And just a reminder, next month is what is our panel next month? Guardianship and supported decision making. That panel will be recorded and just posted up on YouTube. It's not going to be live at the library, but we will be showing it on our big screen that day. So, so that's next month in August. So Kim, if you want to pop up here and talk a little bit about Parents Helping Parents.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hi, I'm Kim Dewar. I'm the Vice President of Parents Helping Parents. It's a nonprofit formed by 3 moms. A lot of you in the room know Britt Jensick and Danielle Salamone and myself. We were sitting around a table at the Children's Agenda advocating for early intervention funding, and we said to ourselves, oh my goodness, the government doesn't care about hearing from providers because it's just asking for more money. They want to hear from the parents. So we started our huge coalition of 3 moms, but now we have over 3,500 parents that follow us and advocate with us. And we decided a few years ago to just not ever stop asking for state level and local level advocacy for funding, but helping the parents here and now. So we put on purposeful programming for free every month. We alternate webinars where you could sit at home, drink your little tea, and have your kids in bed and listen to wonderful educational programming. Next Wednesday night from 8 to 9, we are having a webinar on fine motor skills from 0 to 5. And we also do in-person play dates where we partner with Parenting Village and step-by-step clinical services. We have volunteer providers, OTs, PTs, speech, and special educators come to our play dates and offer help to parents who have questions or are waiting for services or not getting the services that they need. So next month on August 9th, we are going to be at the Motion Junction Playground in Canandaigua from 10 to 12, and it's a Saturday. We also do these diverse abilities dialogues, and I also run a sibling support group for siblings of folks who have special needs. It's a child-led social group who are fast friends because they come from such similar backgrounds. Without even talking about their lives at home, they are like glue. And we're so big now that I actually have a second adult helping me run them. And that is going to be on it's always on the first Tuesday of the month, and it's right here at the Webster Public Library in this room next month. Thank you all for being here. We can't do this without you. Thank you for allowing us to share these wonderful resources with families.
So we're going to get into the panel. So if you would introduce yourself and tell what your organization is, and then about what you do and how you help people in the community. Thanks, Brian. So go ahead, Kathleen, go ahead.
I am Kathy O'Connell. I run Radiant Abilities in Syracuse. However, we are largely virtual, so anyone can access us. I have a dual role of being a licensed mental health counselor, so I provide counseling, and I also have a program helping people, mainly people with disabilities, with learning, dating, and relationship skills, and providing ongoing coaching and support to them.
Hello, I'm Leona Oakes. I am a clinical psychologist based in a private practice in Rochester, New York, and I specialize in mental health of folks with all sorts of intellectual and developmental disabilities, and a lot of my work tends to focus in transition age youth. And so to meet the needs of my clients, I also do a lot of sex education, a lot of dating and relationship stuff, as well as things like launching into adulthood, independence, supported decision making.
Hi everybody, my name is Felicia Thera. I hold a post-professional doctorate in occupational therapy. I've been practicing for over 37 years. Trauma-informed certificate, vestibular sensory certificate, certified. I currently work for Autism Up, but have been working 0 to 5 and above for years, and thank you for letting me be part of this.
Hi, I'm Colleen Hilshober. I'm a nurse practitioner with Pediatric GI. I run the PANS Clinic, which is Pediatric Advanced Nutrition Support Clinic. We follow mostly all the kids with G-tubes, feeding tubes, or IV nutrition, but we follow a lot of kids that just have GI issues and feeding difficulties.
So sometimes we like to start out with like, what's a common question that you get asked at your organization, and like how, what's your suggestion for that kind of thing? So if you wouldn't mind just starting out with like something like common that you get asked a lot. So could you start with that, Kathy?
I would say, how do I meet people to date? Which in today's day and age, you might say it's easier than ever to meet people without the dating apps and whatever, but it's also overwhelming. And for people with disabilities who may need a lot of support in meeting people, it can be very complicated. So I have a whole process that I take people through at looking at, okay, what are 3 things you do already where you can meet people? And then what are 3 new things, events, and places you can try meeting people? And I just said when I introduced myself, not only do I work with people with disabilities, I also work with the staff on helping to support dating and relationship goals for people.
One of the most common questions I get is, when do I start teaching my child about sex ed and safety, and how do I start? And I always explain it's never too early to start. Even when they're babies and you play tickle games and get you games, you're teaching your child about consent. and who's allowed to touch their body and how they're allowed to touch it, and encouraging them to advocate for themselves and listening to their child. Now, are there times as a parent you have to say, listen, I'm sorry, I know you don't want me to touch you, but I've got to carry you to the car because you're throwing a temper tantrum and we got to get out of the road, right? There are times when parents will have to overrule that, but in general, whether it starts with games like I'm going to get you and tickle you, oh, you said no, that's your body, your choice. Oh, this is my body, it is my choice, you can't touch me like that, right? That also starts with what's a private behavior versus a public behavior. We change diapers in bathrooms not just because that is a bathroom activity, but because that is a private space. And we do private things with our genitals in private spaces, whether that is cleaning them, touching them. You know, we learn about it is healthy and normal to touch your body, but if you're going to touch an intimate place, you need to wash your hands before because we don't want to introduce germs there. It's a sensitive part of the body. That is a private activity that we do in a bathroom or a bedroom when no one else is around. And then we wash our hands after because we don't want to spread our germs to others. Otherwise, healthy, normal, not a problem as long as they're not accidentally hurting themselves, right? And again, if you've taught them appropriate anatomical terms so they can say, I hurt my vulva. Okay, let's figure out what happened. Overall, you want to stay calm, and a lot of times that means decreasing your own discomfort with a topic that feels taboo. But if that isn't parenting, I don't know what is. You know, a lot of parenting is getting comfortable doing the things that you're like, oh my God, someone did have to teach me this, right? And I encourage parents, you know, if you look at, especially if you have a typically developing kid and a neurodivergent child, you might say, I didn't have to teach this to my typically developing child. Yeah, they might have gotten sex ed at school, but they also probably talked a lot to their friends and got good and bad information and may have looked things up online, where again, they could have gotten good and bad information. With your neurodivergent child, typically you have a lot more of a responsibility to be much more active in it. And that means answering questions honestly and directly. How do I know what's developmentally appropriate? Answer the question they gave you in simple language with correct terms. If they ask for more, give them more. If they don't, you have met them at their developmental level. And that's okay. I'll definitely give Jennifer a list of resources that I use to help parents learn about the terms themselves, because sometimes a lot of our discomfort with teaching sex ed comes from, I don't know that I necessarily learned everything correctly or learned everything when I should have. And so, right? Right? What's the difference between a vulva and a vagina? I thought girls had a vagina, right? Like, yeah, we need to know the difference between those terms. Sex ed is both informative for the person to take ownership and accountability of their own health, but it's also protective. If I know that that's a private space and no one else touches me there, then if someone tries, I know to tell a trustworthy adult that someone tried to touch me there and that was not okay. If I know that's a private activity and someone else does that private activity in front of me, I know that's not okay and I can go tell a grown-up. Those kinds of things are also empowering and protective. I feel like a lot of times we hope that if they don't know about it, they won't do it, and that's just not true. Sexuality is a human need. It is basic, it is instinctual, they're gonna do it. Let's help them do it safely by talking about it early, answering those questions, and using resources.
And I'll definitely share your resources after. If anybody needs them, just email me otherwise.
So a lot of the questions or comments I'll get are regarding the senses, or our senses, our smell, our touch, our taste, our movement. I'll hear, my son, my daughter can't calm down. They move too fast. They covered their ears. They can't eat. They have this. They're either hypersensitive or hyposensitive to a sensation. When a lot of it all comes down to, if we look at the senses, are we understanding our senses? Do we know our senses? Do we really feel our senses? And it comes down to looking at the senses as gears, what I like to discuss as gears, where if we take a look at our senses and we look at our vestibular or our movement sense as the first gear, and then we have our auditory, our smell, our touch, our taste, our interoception. If our movement sense, if our sense of being grounded and knowing where we are in space is not working, then the other senses aren't going to work. That wheel is not going to turn. So therefore, that's going to affect everything else. And unless we get that grounding feeling and knowing where we are in space and how we are to something else, nothing else is going to come in. It's going to affect our eyes. It's going to affect what we smell, because we are always trying to maintain our grounding and our safety. And that's what it comes back to all the time, is security. A secure individual is a safe individual. And figuring out how do we do that. Not just saying, okay, which is important to put headphones on, but let's take a look at what's underlying that. Why do we need the headphones? Why are we hypersensitive to sound? Why are we hyposensitive to touch? What is going on that's making us have to feel that way or not feel that way? And to really take a look at the underlying and the foundation. We are, I like to say, like houses. We have that foundation, we have that concrete. Nothing else can build off of it. If you've ever seen those pyramids of everything that come. That's why the milestones are so important. And it's so important to reach those milestones and have those senses build off of that. Because if that doesn't happen, nothing else is going to happen. We can get staple skills, and we see that, but then there's always going to be a crack in that foundation. If you're living in a beautiful home and there's a crack somewhere, you may not know it for the first 2 or 3 years. But then you come and say, oh my God, I have flooding. How did this happen? And we have to figure out where it is and not just put a Band-Aid on it, because that Band-Aid is only going to last for the time that that Band-Aid stays on. And we have to look at everything in that movement system, that where I am in space. My feet are touching the ground. I know if I'm touching over here, who I'm touching, how I'm touching, where everybody is in relation to me. I'm feeling pretty safe, so I can answer these questions cognitively and understand what's going on. If I didn't have that, I'd be nervous and I may be anxious because I'm not secure in my own self. Well, thank you. I feel the same way. Thank you. Thank you.
Wow, that's a tough act to follow. Sorry, in GI, the major questions we get is, what is normal? What is normal? What's a normal bowel movement? How often should they be going? Is it normal that my child doesn't eat by mouth or eats by just liquids or only eats Happy Meals? Or is this normal? How are they getting enough nutrition? Are they getting the right amount of nutrition? I think we have to take the parents' expectations, because it's something we do every day, eat, go to the bathroom, and we think it's normal for us, but is that normal for everybody? Is going once a week normal for us okay? Is it okay for our child? So we have to take their expectations, community's expectations, or societal expectations, and narrow it down to each child as individual. Everything is different. And what's normal for one child might not be normal for another. And we try to make it work so that, yes, they can eat, so let's let them eat. I am all for letting a child eat. But if they can't, then we supplement it overnight with G-tube feedings. If they have a tube, we change their diet. We have a dietitian that works with us that can adjust that. There's medications that we can use to help, but we try to do as much naturally as we can without using medications or other things. So our thing is just trying to make everyone understand what's normal for one might not be normal for another.
So I did get a couple of questions from parents beforehand, and the first question I got was, what are the best ways to heal a leaky gut? Is there a way to retrain lax bowel muscles?
Yeah, talk about easy questions right off the bat. So I want to get to the other end of the table again, but leaky gut is one of those controversial things. There's not a lot known about it, so that we don't have a definite protocol in place. We don't have a definite answer. what they're talking about in leaky gut is whether or not that membrane has increased permeability, allowing the nutrients to exit the GI system and get into the systemic circulation. So our belief, even though there's not a lot of studies, a lot of documentation yet for us to follow, what we believe is to maintain a healthy microbiome, to maintain healthy nutrition, to keep that, to maintain that healthy gut barrier, to hopefully limit the leaky gut, as we say, until we can get more. So how do you do that? I mean, it's easy to say. We say to avoid foods that we know that can cause problems with the leaky gut, which are antibiotics, NSAIDs, which are ibuprofen or other things, non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, things that could cause other problems. And it's that healthy eating that we all should be eating, avoiding the refined carbohydrates, food additives, other things like that. Chronic stress, intense exercise can also add to it, causing damage to the gut. And then we try to say, let's eat a little healthier. So let's avoid all those foods, but maybe if we have some better fiber, that helps. Probiotics, maintaining that healthy gut microbiome with probiotics is always a good idea. We like a variety of microbiomes and way of doing that. Omega-3s help. So we work very closely with our dietitians, and that we help to come up with a good, healthy diet. So it's something that we all could do. So it's not just necessarily related to our kids that have disabilities or feeding tubes or whatever else. Until we can definitely get a definite guideline as to what's the best way to follow, that's what we've been doing as far as that goes. And then as far as retraining lax bowel movements, it depends on what's causing it. So is it hypotonia that's causing the issue? Do we need to work on other things? There is therapy. There are pelvic exercises. We work closely with physical therapists for ways of adding ways. There's bowel training programs that we can do using biofeedback and other things. Is it a child appropriate to do that? We don't know. Is it a matter of starting slow and working your way up? So a lot of it involves an evaluation with GI to determine what's the best way to do it. Do we need to add fiber? Are they just not sensing it because there's not enough bulk to their stool? Is there a way we can change things that they're just not listening to their body? Because that's a major thing, just like she was saying, that you have to be aware of your body and what's going on. So can they sense even that they have it? If you're used to having constipation and you dilate that rectal vault, it doesn't send the signal to your brain anymore that you have to go. So you can be completely filled with stool and you don't know it. And that can cause the lax bowel muscles. So now we need to keep it empty, keep things going so it will shrink down to make it easier. And then we start working on a behavioral program. If you eat, you know food's coming in, your body says, hey, food's coming in, I gotta get rid of stuff. So that's the best time to sit on the toilet or the potty to work on having a bowel movement, so that we work on that program. So you have dinner, they have them sit on the toilet for 5-10 minutes, see if they have a bowel movement, so you can associate a behavior with a sensation.
Very interesting. That answers a lot of my questions right there. You're doing great, Colleen. No worries. So our next question here is addressing hyperflexivity of all joints, particularly the fingers. So I'm not really sure, yes, did you want to elaborate on that question?
Yes, so she has hyperflexivity throughout her entire body. So both the fine and the gross motor skills are a little off. She's been on and off in OT and PT. We just came from there right now. So it's becoming more and more prominent in the things that she does, in her handwriting, in playing the piano, in playing the guitar, in dancing. She doesn't realize that it's happening because she's so used to it. Mm-hmm. So if we would look at her, we'd be like, oh my gosh, she's gonna break something. Is something broken already? What's up with that? She is extending to the point where I'm afraid that she's going to hurt herself because she doesn't know that she's doing it.
Does she not know, and I don't mean to, is this your daughter?
Yeah.
Is it okay if I address her instead of,
Yeah,
I don't
that's
want to
fine,
just
that's
talk
fine.
around her? Do you feel when it happens?
Sometimes, sometimes not.
Sometimes and sometimes not. And I think that is one of the things. It's called interoception. So it's being able to feel your body and knowing the sensations. And I think that's a really important piece to that.
Okay.
Do you, and without getting too personal, do you feel the need to be hungry? Do you feel the need not when you're not hungry? Do you feel when you don't feel good? These are things that we have to look at, and it's, if you're thirsty, we all know what's going to happen, but it's different for everybody. If I'm thirsty, my mouth might get dry, something might else happen. What is it going to be for you? You may be feeling it, but not really understand and tuned in. And that's where an interception program, which can be done by an OT or you can go online, Kelly Mahler, Mahler, is a wonderful resource. And she is online, and it will help you understand what you're feeling in your body. And I think that's a great place to start. My other thing is there a diagnosis? Is there any diagnosis that goes along with it? I mean, again, I'm not a diagnostician, but
She
Eller's.
has like 20 different disabilities. And
Right.
one of the things they brought up, despite the fact she'd already had previous genetic testing, was could it be Ehlers-Danlos?
Yeah, that was where my head
So
went.
now we're going back to genetics just to make sure they didn't miss anything the first time.
Right, and regardless of what you can put on it, you still want to help, right? But you want that interception piece. Again, we don't know each other, but I would challenge you to think about if you feel other things, or if it takes, are you hypersensitive to feeling when you have to go to the bathroom, or does it take you a long time? Oh my God, now I have to go and it's that long, you know? And how long does it? Yes. Yes, and so that to me is interception, and that is another sense. And we tend to forget that, and we need to go back to that and realize. And there are some therapists that do interception. I know, and I hate to plug this, but in autism, I do a body-mind connections that we run, and we do run an interception piece, and we teach you about the body and how it feels and what you and I feel, and you may call it squiggly, I may call it pain, whatever you feel, but identifying that, because that's going to be your first key. And as you're sitting here telling me there's other aspects of your life too with that interception that probably could be helpful for. But I would go online, Kelly Mahler, she's a wonderful OT, and she's the one who started this whole interception. There's a lot of articles, there's empirical evidence, it's wonderful. So it's Mahler. And I bet you that you can do some of that too if you get her books and do some online stuff and really do that. But that's a. I do not know. You may want to look up. There might be some. I know that I'm certified it only because that was part of my postdoc. But I don't. There might be some other individuals that do it in this area, and we're not running that class right now, unfortunately. But go online and see. She might even do some private stuff, and she would be the one. If she's a great resource. She's just an amazing.
Thank you so much.
Oh my gosh.
She has an OT and PT right now, but they're not familiar with certain things that she has.
Yeah, and I think she needs to be familiar with certain things and feel her body and understand it first, because if you can't understand yourself, how are you going to explain it to anybody else? And that's where it all comes down to, right? I hope that was helpful.
Yes, thank you.
And to do your program at Autism Up, you do not have to have autism.
No, you do not have to have autism, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to be, self, for promoting, but,
Well, if you have the experience, we would love you to self-promote.
yes,
This is what we're looking
but
for.
we do, and I do that. That was part of my postdoc, is under Kelly Mahler, and interception is a very interesting piece, because we always get, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to, but why is my child not going to the bathroom? Why is it at the last minute? Why is it this? And as parents, you get frustrated, right? They know how to go, they know where to go, but they're not feeling it. It's that sensation, it's that body. And again, it all goes back to that movement, that motion, where I am in space, where I am not in space, because if you are not secure and you do not know, you need your body to work for you. You need to work, you need to not have, you need to be able to not have to work for your body. Your body has to work for you. And that's what it all comes down to. And there is a way to get there and do it.
To move on to a different question here, there's a specific question about this person said they have an 18-year-old stepson that seems to have taken an interest in the parent other than that, which you would expect a son to have a relationship with their parent, but not that way. For example, she's fairly certain that he was watching her while she was in the shower. How would you handle that kind of situation? Like, what would you do? How would you help that parent?
Yeah. So I would actually encourage, right, like if this is a child with an opposite sex parent and there is also a same sex parent in the home, I would encourage the same sex parent to talk to them about it first, because they're going to have a shared lived experience, right? Especially if everyone's heterosexual, right? So we're making some assumptions. But if he's watching the opposite sex parent, it's safe to say that that's at least part of who he's attracted to. With a very non-judgmental, like, it seems like you have an interest in female bodies. You are watching someone shower that has a female body. It's okay to be curious about other people's bodies, but we don't watch people's bodies or look at people's bodies when they're naked without their permission, and it would be inappropriate for you to do that with your stepmom. There are other ways to learn about and explore female bodies, and I can help you find that in a way that is appropriate. But again, like, of course, if he is a sexually maturing teenager, he is going to be curious about what he is attracted to. So you give them safe resources to look at those attractions. And again, like now more than ever, there are so many sources available for free and for paid that both give healthy relationship scenarios and healthy resources and appropriate looking at sexuality as affection and respect that is shared and mutual. And there are things that are not. So you want to make sure that you're finding appropriate resources for them and giving them access to those resources. If he were a typically developing teen, it's likely he would have found it by now on his own. If he isn't, this is actually an opportunity for you to make sure that he has resources that are appropriate, that show respectful relationships, that are fully consenting. And that is a wonderful opportunity to have. And so it's that conversation. And also, like, now that you know that that's an interest of him, let's make sure we're talking about private versus public if we haven't been by now. And let's make sure we have locks on the bathroom, both for you and for him.
Yeah.
That he is private in that space. No one is going to watch him shower. And it's, again, it's that mutual respect of privacy and personal space.
So with like, one of the questions we have here is about like dating, marrying, going to college, that kind of thing. And like, how do you have those conversations with your child and like get that, you know, thinking about the future? Like, what is your suggestion, Kathy? Like,
Well, I would always begin those conversations with asking the child, the person, what their thoughts are, what their vision is, because what we may be thinking may be different from what they're thinking. So you want to always get that first and then talk about why you want that. What do you hope to experience in doing that? And I remember reading that question at the time, and what's it, the second part? Believing they could.
yeah, which I left off, but yeah, that the parent thought that they would never be able to do that, like that wouldn't be possible for them. So how do they address that with them?
Right, and I'm a big one that, well, I, as you can tell, was born with cerebral palsy, and grew up with a father who always said to me, never say never. So I grew up with possibility. And even though there are times that we get disappointed from possibility not working out, the hope and the stretching for possibility can help us to grow in any way. So again, that's why I would encourage the parents to first find out what is their child thinking, what are their dreams, what do they want, what can be made possible. You know, maybe they don't go to college at RIT, but they go to a college for living like we have at a community college in Syracuse.
I think that's a real struggle that, you know, because as a parent of a child with a disability, you make those decisions for them a day in and day out, and you forget to say, well, what do they want? So that is a good point.
I guess, can I ask a follow-up to that? So, like, let's say, for example, the question would be like, having a baby and marriage and things like that. Like, yes, anything is possible, but is there a detriment to saying something is possible and then it not happening and like affecting their mental health because they didn't achieve that? Because, I don't know, typical developing kids are obsessed with YouTube and reality TV that is actually not real at all.
Right.
So if you take a young adult who has an intellectual disability, their perception of those realities is going to be different already. How do we gear them to have like safe mental health, safe expectations for themselves, but also not squashing their dreams?
Well, I would encourage him to be able to dream with guardrails. So, you know, if you sense that your child will not be able to have their own child someday, and that parenting would not be in their realm, maybe a way to begin that is to explain in short ways how challenging parenting can be. And I didn't know it when they still do that I feel, but back in the day, we had to carry around eggs for a week, and we, yeah. So you know, that could be another alternative is to have a simulated experiment, because many times people see others doing this and fulfilling their dreams and going for what they want, and they think, why can't I? So it's about, I believe, helping them to dream, create a life, but having those realistic guardrails. And I actually think for all people, the most helpful advice is that you can't do everything, but you can do some things really well. I know I botched up that quote, but you get the idea. So focusing on what can be possible.
And
The-
to complement that, I love that imagery of dreaming within guardrails. I also, especially as folks get older, I talk about, well, what need is that going to fulfill? Right? When we think of a romantic relationship and marriage, that's actually about fulfilling that deep connection, to have your person and to have that person fill a bunch of your needs. If marriage isn't in the cards, how else do we meet that need of connecting deeply to another person? That can be met in many ways, with deep friendships, with relationships that might be romantic, but maybe not marriage, with family relationships. If there's a deep need to care for someone young and help shape them, what's another way to meet that? We can volunteer with kids. We can have a career working with children if being someone who carries a baby isn't in your cards, right? So I also look at what is the emotional need that they believe that goal will fill. What are other ways we can make sure that need is met?
Back to that foundation. Love it.
That's great. So another question a parent asked was about sexual health. Like, how do you talk to your, or how do you, how to take your daughter with multiple disabilities to the gynecologist? Like, how do you go about that? I know with my daughter, I have a similar situation, but she's nonverbal, and taking somebody like you're talking about, like what's a safe touch and what's not, and that kind of thing. But for that, people who may not understand that either too.
Yeah.
But like, what is that? Like, how do you take your child to these types of appointments that might be challenging?
You bring them to yours first, right? You have your daughter attend your gynecological visit with you, and you talk to her about it. As a woman, mommy has to go to the doctor, a special doctor for women's parts, every year. And every 3 years, there's a physical exam. And even though that's a private part of my body that no one touches without my permission, I give the doctor my permission on that day to examine that part of my body to make sure it is healthy. There are important parts of my body that can get sick. We need to make sure it's not sick. That's what the doctor does when they check on my body. You're going to come with me, and you can, and this is uncomfortable, right? Nobody even likes that visit. No one's like, yay, I'm going to the gynecologist. But we do it because we want to make sure we don't have cervical cancer, because we want to make sure everything's working well. And you let your daughter look at whatever she needs to look at during that visit, because that models for her. Because a lot of this education feels so awkward to our young people, because it's like, why do I have to do this? And it's like, oh no, honey, everybody's got to do it. Right? This isn't just the doctor forcing themselves on you. This is an important part of our healthcare. We're going to normalize it. You're going to come with me. I would encourage you to start bringing your daughter when she's 10 to 12 years old, because especially if you only get a physical exam every 3 years now, for those that don't know, that's the new guideline, right? We're going to bring her so that she can get used to. This is a part of caring for our bodies as women. It is uncomfortable. Sometimes it pinches. And just like a vaccine, we get it over with. We do it because that's how we keep our bodies healthy. And then we go and get ourselves a little nice experiment afterwards, whether that's a milkshake or a mani-pedi, right? Like, we also teach ourselves, when we take care of our bodies, we take care of our hearts, and we can do a little treat after something that's hard for us. That's okay.
Yeah, I just want to say something in regards to that too, and I think it's very important is, as a parent or as a guardian or a caretaker, is that co-regulation piece. Just going back to some of the stuff that you said, when you are in any situation, how you react, how you don't react, how your body moves, how your body doesn't move, how your eyes move, how everything is going to get to that individual, non-speaking or speaking. Whether you think there's understanding or not, there's certain things that are just understood. And that co-regulation happens all the time. So in addition to doing that is your body and how you're explaining it. If you're explaining it in fear, or I'm so sorry, or I don't, that's going to trigger that. Because essentially, even though your words are saying something different, you're telling them, no, it's really not okay, and it's something to be scared about. And I think that goes throughout everything else. And I think that co-regulation piece, no matter what we're working on with our individuals that don't learn the way that everybody else does, is we have to take accountability for ourselves too, and make sure that we are calm, which is, as a parent, is not always the easiest thing because we got stuff going on, but we have to make sure we do it in the best way to not impose stuff on our individuals, and to let them know, hey, this is just part of it, you know? But if I come in, or, you know, I'm crying or I'm upset, that's going to send a different message even though the words aren't saying it.
Yeah, my daughter cried through an appointment that I took her to because I was stressed out. And she cried the entire time, and I was like, once we got into the car, she was fine, and I was fine. So that totally reads to me right there.
And I don't care whether you're a parent of a neurodivergent or a neurotypical. We all do this, right? We all do this. I can remember taking my daughter for shots, and it was my first child, and I was like, and you know, and it's like, what message am I sending? But I think it's so important because, again, a secure child or a secure individual is a happy individual.
I just want to add to that unfortunately there are still doctors out there, GYNs and primaries, with the mindset that if a female with a disability is not sexually active, they don't need to see a GYN. Which is completely wrong. So in addition to, say, going to your own provider, making sure whatever provider you go to is receptive to taking patients with disabilities.
Thank you.
I think Lorna has a suggestion.
So I was just looking at Autism Speaks, because they have lovely toolkits, and they don't have a toolkit for going to, the Autism Speaks toolkits are really handy for a lot of other things, but they don't
Yes.
have one for GYN.
Better talk to them about that.
So would you recommend for parents when they go with when their child comes with them to make a social story so that they can refresh when it comes to their turn, these things are not so scary?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
And in terms of resources, the Elevatus curriculum, which is a wonderful curriculum written with typically developing and folks with developmental disabilities. It's a sex ed curriculum, but it includes things like consent, relationship, and things like that. They have a huge variety of resources. As someone who has purchased the curriculum, I have used their visuals because they have really well done anatomical visuals to create things like social stories and things like that, because that helps too. Because it's important to remember, right? Someone might be nonverbal, but they're really non-speaking. They are listening to your words and they are hearing your words. And so explaining to them, just as you would explain to someone who can speak back to you, is part of it. But including those visuals is huge.
And just to piggyback on that too, is I think it depends on the individual's way they learn, right? So a social story, not just for going to the OBGYN, but a social story for anything that might be new or different, because again, if we're not secure, we need to know what we're going into so we then don't have that increased anxiety. That at least will alleviate, oh, okay, these are the pictures, this is what I'm seeing. Okay, my body doesn't know how to react to that, but at least I have some idea so I don't have to get more excited, more anxious, and then go into that flight or fight or flee. There's a question.
Like a hypersensitivity issue, or like the thought of being touched there, like they don't even like to touch themselves there. God forbid, put anything there.
Well, I was going to say, you know, I think that goes back to the interception, obviously, and that goes back to sensations and getting in touch with your body and being able to feel and how you go about doing that. You know, it's hard. It's really hard, you know, and I think that those are delicate situations. So how you go about doing that has to be done with somebody who understands that part of therapy and that part of how to do that, or even just working on sensation overall and then getting that sense in. But again, with that touch piece, and I always go back to it, and I'm sorry if it's ad nauseum, but you're either hypersensitive or hyposensitive to something because there's something that piece that we have to figure out and get back to that security. Or it may be because of an incident that we had before. So there may be that, and I don't want to say trauma piece, but that reminder of something that happened, and that was that's it, yes, and that's what we need to work on, right? And so then you go into, wow, who's trauma informed and who's all that, because that's the piece. Is it really that hypersensitivity then, or is it coming back from stemming from something different that occurred? And that could have occurred at the age of a year, at the age of a year and a half, but that still is laying in there, and that was never resolved.
Is
Yeah.
there such a thing as a gynecologist for people with disabilities?
I mean, so do we have someone specifically that advertises that as their specialty? I don't think so, but there are gynecologists in our community that do excellent work with folks with disabilities. Absolutely. And there's one I feel like we often funnel to.
That would be Dr. Nicandri?
Yes,
Yes.
thank you. I'm so bad with names.
Yeah.
Can you spell that, please? Nicandri?
Nicandri, N-A.
Nicandri at
Yeah,
125
she's
Lattimore.
wonderful.
Do you have a social story about gynecological visits that you could share with
I feel like I must.
where it's lacking?
Like I have memories of making
Autism
them.
Speaks doesn't have,
Autism Speaks has a lot of toolkits going to the dentist.
but not for that.
They don't have one for GYN care.
Yeah.
Can
I
we
think I have a very
make that
personalized
happen?
one, so I would need to depersonalize it, right? And make it so you can repersonalize it, right? Because an ideal social story has a picture of the actual doctor's office, a picture of the actual doctor.
Right.
But I can definitely give you one that has the template of at least all the anatomical parts and language, and the tools. We had pictures of the tools too. And things like that. And then you can kind of put in your own photos of your doctor and your office. But to complement too, right, there's the introspection piece of the sensation, but then there's also the psychological piece, right? If it's causing anxiety, what is the root of that anxiety? Is it trauma or is it shame, right? A lot of religious beliefs feed into how we express our sexuality and how we explore our sexuality. And that can also be something that is complicated for families to figure out and deal with, but I encourage families to really come from a place as non-judgmental and welcoming and loving and supportive as possible. It is your body. There is nothing shameful about your body. So a part of the sensitivity of that area is that, like, shame and embarrassment, that also needs to be worked on, and that's a separate piece.
Yeah. And again, just even that social story will not touch that other piece, so to speak, because we're not getting to the root of that. And it might help and alleviate some, but just getting back to that root of, okay, let's figure out, because this is not going to come up on over here. It's that crack that's in that foundation.
We had a lot of other questions on regulation, like how do I handle my child disrobing in public, and also fecal smearing at night, and like when they're supposed to be sleeping, like any suggestions on that? So there's a lot of questions about, you know, kids taking their clothes off, whether in public or private spaces, and how you address those things with your children.
And the fecal smearing could be from many
Fecal-
different.
Yeah, it doesn't have to just be at night, it could be anywhere.
It's very easy for me to sit up here and say, oh, well, they're doing that, you do this, this, and this, and this. But I can't without, A, getting the whole spectrum and checking it out, and B, really looking at that individual as an individual, and what is happening, and how are they moving, how are they not moving, why are they moving this way, why are they not moving this way, is there something else going on? A lot of times, you know, again, we talk about those senses. We talk about it's that security that's not going on. And even looking at certain things, I have a lot of parents come and say, you know, when I recommend physical therapy along with OT and doing that, they're like, well, my child is strong. And I'll say, yes, when they move in fast motion. But when you slow them down and you really try to get them to do the things they can't get their body to move that way. And it may appear one way, but we have to get in there and really look at every aspect and every piece. And that goes back to the beginnings. That goes back to making sure we're moving right. We're moving everything. We're getting everything accessed, because no matter when you move, if I turn my head, if I lift my arm, if I use my hands, there are so many things that are happening between our brain and our body and our eyes and our body and our cranial nerves that are setting everything off. And we react differently depending on where we are securely. And the other thing that I do hear often too is they're just stubborn. They always want it their way. Well, to me, it's like, okay, yes, and or they'll say, well, they're very social. They'll go up, hi, how are you? Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to touch you. Hi, how are you? How are you doing? But that is also a way that they don't have to deal with somebody coming to them because they don't know how to react to doing that. So it's taking control and looking at it that a different is, why are they taking control? Why do they need to control? Why do they need to have that? Because I'm not secure in what's going on, and if you trip me up, I'm done. Okay, and that's where I look at with regulation. And unfortunately, and what I see, and one of my missions at Autism Up is I have a lot of these older adults coming in that we have to go back to basics now. We've got to go back, because regulation and sensory is like a diet. You can lose all the weight you want, and then you give a little bit here, and then you still maintain, but then once you give up on it, it all comes back. It's a journey. It's like, you got to keep doing it. How you do it and how you do it, it's part of life. But we do it automatically, and that's why as we age, then we see individuals slow down and do that stuff, because they're not moving as much. So that's where we start seeing the same things.
I can say for us, we always try to rule out the physical reasons first. Because just because they're doing a behavior isn't necessarily sensory or something. It's easy to attribute to that. So if we say, oh, they're fecal smearing or digging at their diaper, that is just a behavior or something like that. So I always look for physical first before I go on beyond that, you don't want to miss something. We have kids that pull out their G-tube all the time, and I'm like, why are you doing that? It doesn't make sense, and you find out they have a gastritis or some other reason. They're trying to tell me something. So there are reasons why kids could be fecal smearing or digging in the diaper area. Is there a rash? Do they have, pinworms? I mean, normal stuff that they could have. You never know what it is that's there. Do they have internal hemorrhoids that are causing them a problem? I mean, there are a lot of reasons why they could be doing it. So I rule out those things first before I also focus on the behaviors. Yes, you want to minimize that. You can do, as I was told once by a dear friend, that it was a crime of opportunity. So if they have an open area, they dig at it or whatever. So you want to make sure you're putting you can buy the one-piece jammies and put them on backwards and zip it up backwards so they can't get at it. If it's really hot, you can cut the legs off and the arms off so that they're not sweating. There's, other ways that you can do it to minimize their ability to get into their diaper area. But first, I like to rule out, make sure there's no medical cause for it.
I feel like a lot of times people go straight to the behavior, so it's nice to hear somebody say that they actually are looking at health issues as well, so that's great.
And I'm gonna stop right there. I'm a very big proponent. I don't like to use the word behaviors, because behavior is, for any of us, when we display a behavior, we're telling something. We're telling a story. And what that story is, you've got to figure that out from beginning to middle to end. It's beyond, there's a great book called Beyond Behaviors.
Yeah.
And that is communication.
You're right.
That, and until we realize that, we just see what's above what they call the iceberg. We just see what's happening, and we just see that. And that's one of the things. And the other thing that we can't forget, and I'm sure you guys can all agree, is there's typical behaviors that happens as you go through the milestones and as you go through age appropriate. But what happens is when there's dysregulation and the inability to take in things correctly, it's not going to look like everything else, and it may be escalated or not. So what might start as age appropriate then becomes not age appropriate. And I think that's where we need to stop and take a look. And I think that's one of the things that most people don't. It's more reactionary on our part because, oh my God, like you said, we have to cessate it. We have to stop because that's not normal. And that goes back to really what you said.
Just on the topic of disrobing, I have a friend who has a son who basically they are now homebound because he will not put clothes on, and it's not socially appropriate to be naked in the environment. Luckily, he had a very supportive school staff where they actually shut down the hallways and had him come in and then get dressed with his teachers, and then they actually had a program where the teachers went to the home and started to get him dressed from there, blah, blah, blah. But I'm thinking of these folks with kids who the fear of them disrobing in public is so great that they are homebound. They are not getting out in the community. Where do they start?
You know, I think it depends. There's a lot of open ends to that what you're asking, because I would then go again, did anything happen? Did anything happen to their body? Is there any rashes? Is there any food allergies? Is there anything that's making them uncomfortable? Is it, you know, do we know that it's true sensory in it? Do we know that it has to do with movement? These are things that I would like to come in, and I can't say for sure until I look at my whole thing and say, where is it coming from? Yes, it's hard because what do you do? Are there some clothes that they will wear? Will they wear a robe? Can we start with this? I think it's amazing. I've never heard of anybody doing that, and I give kudos to the school that did that. You know, why are they able to get dressed when they're at school and not at home? You know, these are the things that I have to look at. You know, is it then that we make that okay, when we come in, they come in and get dressed here, and then we backwards chain. But what is happening? Why is there's a reason. That's a behavior, if you will. But why? Is it because we habituated into that? Is it because something happened? Is it because I just don't like the lighting or the feel? Or is it
because their parent is losing their mind and not
Right.
regulated?
No.
I can tell you, it could be, but again,
You see me in my morning routine, I'm like,
but again, I tell you, as a parent, that's hard to keep our stuff together.
yeah.
You know, it's hard to keep our stuff together. You know, I did this job and I worked with kids on the autism, back-to-back sessions, back-to-back, on the floor, getting punched, getting hit. And then I came home to my daughter, who had her needs, and she was, you know, she's neurotypical, but she had her needs. She was going through whatever. And being present and being to do that, that's the hardest thing. And we have to check ourselves as much as we look about, and we have to co-regulate ourselves. I just gave a workshop for our employees on how do you co-regulate yourself? How do you look and see when your cup is full? How do you see when you tap out? Not only should we sit here be talking about our individuals, but about ourselves, because we need to co-regulate, okay? But we can all the time. And if we get frustrated, and we're human, you know?
I just want to ask you one more question about a totally different topic, about Miralax. What are your feelings about Miralax? Do you think it's addictive? Do you think that there's and then we'll get into final thoughts, so I apologize. I just wanted to hit that because I think that's
Not a problem.
a
And
very
that's a
common
big-
question.
Yeah, it's a very common question, and it's a hot topic, because we all love Miralax because we think it's this miracle laxative. But it doesn't, it's not, you can't become dependent on it. It works on the inside. When you take Miralax, it's an osmotic laxative. It makes the stool softer. It doesn't work on the muscles. It's not helping you push things out. All it does is make the stool softer. So we do like it. We like the fact that you can adjust the dose as you need to have one soft stool a day. If you give them too much, all it's doing is coming out in the stool. It can cause some gas and some other issues. So that being said, there have been reports of people having some behavioral issues with it or noticing things. Now, is it related to the Miralax? Is it related to their chronic problem of chronic constipation or other issues? Nobody knows for sure. There's no definite FDA studies or FDA things. articles or scientific papers that have been studied on it to date yet. So we can't say that there's a correlation. I have had some parents come in and say, I've done this and this is what happened. My child has been a little bit more sensitive, a little bit more irritable, behavior outbursts, other things. Then we stop using it, we try something else and see if that works. So I don't know that it's the miracle laxative that we all once thought it was. I do think it's something that we have in our toolbox that we can use, but there's other things that we can use. I'm a big proponent of using more natural things. Is there foods? Foods are great things to use. Is there a way we can use foods to help regulate that? Are there other medicines? Are there routines that we can set in place and work on other things? So I don't know that it's the be-all, end-all answer. I do know I have kids that have been on Miralax for years and have done fine with it. I've had others that don't react to the Miralax at all, no matter what we do as far as dosing goes. So it's not a one-size-fits-all. We can adjust it accordingly.
Thank you.
Do you know of chiropractic helping with bowel movements? Because personal experience, I have no idea, but once my daughter Vivian started going to the chiropractor, we've never used Miralax again.
There you go. I have had similar stories from other parents. Again, going by the scientific basis and papers, I don't know without doing a full literature search as to what is out there. But I have a lot of family members that really swear by it and say it works great. They also, anecdotally, we've noticed that if somebody has a spinal fusion, they're in better alignment. We've noticed issues because their GI tract is better lined up and then that gets better. So, I mean, there is a lot associated with having a bowel movement and having things come out. So I'm totally agree with that.
So we have, excuse me, gone over noon by quite a far. Does anybody have any final thoughts before we wrap up? Do you want to say anything to share in any way that you might have not had a chance to?
I guess my take-home message is embracing sexuality as just another healthy part of who your child is. And that means talking about it, educating about it, that is both protective and nurturing. And if that is hard for you, then encouraging you to discover why that is for you. Doing your own self-discovery around what does sexuality mean to you, why is that so hard for you to talk about, and encouraging your own peace there, because that's going to help you bring peace to your child there.
And if I could piggyback, what I would like to share is, yes, sexuality, wonderful, need to know, and don't forget about dating and relationships. I often say, how are people going to have good sexuality if they can't go on a date? Not that they're necessarily always intertwined, but I think we got to bring in the social, emotional piece of helping support people with disabilities in the whole dating process and the courage, confidence, self-esteem that requires.
For me, it's really important that we look at behaviors and we look at how the individual moves and how they don't move, because that says a lot. What, as a child, as a baby, what they were able to do, what they weren't able to do, the milestones, and how they were able to move through that, because we want to make sure that we fill in those cracks. And don't look at when they're being stubborn or they're being fast or they're being this and quick to say, oh, that's not the way it is. Well, there's a reason, and we need to figure out what that reason is. And it's not always easy, and it is hard, because especially if you have a 14-year-old that has habituated to this and now is resistant to doing any other thing, that's a hard place to be. You know, therapy it's hard, but it should be fun, and it should be challenging, because if you don't challenge, you're not going to change, and that's a hard thing for some individuals to understand because it is hard. But it's hard because they don't know how to move and it's more scary. And that's where the nervous system comes in. And I think understanding that nervous system, or even looking more into that nervous system and looking at how it affects when you move and you don't move, and what state, if you're already in, like we just talked about, that hyper state as a parent, well, where are our individuals at? And if they're cup or they're already there, and we're putting one more thing and one more demand on it, yeah, we're going to have an explosion because they're not being able to fill that in. So it's really important, you know, as an OT, we do a lot of different things. We're in a lot of people's business, and we do a lot of different aspects of it. But we really have to take a look and look at those interception pieces because, again, if you're not feeling your body, and just because I'm smiling does not mean I'm happy inside. So.
Sorry, I'm taking notes. I've learned a lot as well, so that was good for me. I just think people need to accept the children where they're at and work with them as best we can to get to where the best possible self. Each child is individual. There is no cookie cutter answer to everything. And you have to make sure that you find a good care provider that is going to meet your needs and work with you as a team. And I think parents are amazing anyways in the amount of stuff we ask them to do. But they also have the answers a lot of times, and they need us to work with them. So that's my thought. It is so true.
Sorry, I do have one more, sorry. If you know me, you know I could go on for 3 years. But your relationship to any individual, that's where you start. You don't just start going to a gynecologist and putting your hands on and doing that, because a secure individual is a safe individual. And again, when we talk about those facial features, if I go into somebody who has no crow's feet, who just is straight, I'm not gonna feel comfortable. If you come in and you're calm and you have that energetic and that feeling, I'm gonna be more apt to come and even give you a chance than going in. So even those people are doing co-regulation. So.
Well, thank you, everyone. You've been wonderful, and I really appreciate you spending the extra 15 minutes on today's panel. I think we could have gone on for hours. You just have so much information.
more to ask.
So,
Can we talk about retained reflexes? Okay,
That's
might have to
all
do a
part
second
of the
panel.
stimulant. They all tie in
Thank
together.
you so much, you guys.
yeah, so thank you. And if anybody has any other questions, please come up and just chat with our lovely host today. Our
We say
panelists.
every single time we learn so much. We think we know it all because we're parents.